There is no better time of the year than when we knock on the door of spring, and we're doing that. We're about to reveal the top 25 Perfect Games, top 25 rankings on all the JUCOs in the land. It's the JUCO baseball rankings. We're excited to roll them out. By the way, on the website, perfectgame.org, you can take it down deeper than 25, go on down to 50. We want to encourage that, but let's get to know these teams. Brian Sikowski, national cross-checker, the great writer and the great scout for Perfect Game, and a huge advocate for this level of baseball, joins us now. Brian, thanks for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. As soon as the calendar turns to January 1st, it's JUCO season. We've been at it pretty hard for several weeks now. Excited to get going.
A couple of things we want to share with our viewers right away and passionate JUCO fans. Number one, it's all inclusive. You're going border to border, level to level. Explain.
Yeah, you see the NJCAA polls and whoever does polls where they rank, specific to category. NJCAA D1, NJCAA D2. California plays in its own league, so they have their own rankings. The Pacific Northwest states play in their own league, so they have their own rankings. We don't do any of that. Everyone's all included. D1, D3, D2, NJCAA, the CCCBA, the NWAC, anybody who plays JUCO baseball in our great country, they are eligible for our top 25. And you'll see that reflected once we go through them. There's several California teams, several D2 teams all lumped together.
Let's do it right now. Let's go 25 on down. Let's start with the first bunch and go all 25 on down. Within that, I see Illinois, California, another team that jumps in from Florida, two of them as a matter of fact. So take us 25 down, and let's start with Logan and then run us down to 21.
Yeah, Johnny Logan at 25 starting us off. You're going to see a common thread throughout these where it's teams that when you look at them, you want to have them higher. And Logan's one of those clubs who, when we first started doing it, we're thinking top 15 or so. And that's no knock on them or any of these other teams here, or even any of the ones we have in 26 through 50. It speaks to the parity of JUCO this year. But expecting Logan to be really offensive, they should be able to swing it. They were a really power-heavy team last year. I think they took a little bit of a step back from that, added some more athleticism, added some more completeness to the lineup. They'll have to break in some freshman arms. They don't bring a lot back in that respect, but still a talented team to keep an eye on. Ohlone up in NorCal, one of the premier teams every year when it comes to California JUCO. There's a handful in NorCal that we could talk about in that same breath. And in fact, we will in the next segment talk about one of those closely. But head coach Michael Curran, a team that throughout the process of us talking to other clubs, and that's a big part of this, is calling coaches and talking to them, getting the feel for their clubs in their areas. They were brought up by a bunch of the NWAC schools we talked to. They were brought up by a bunch of the California schools that we talked to. When I was able to talk with Coach Curran, we're seeing that sort of talent up and down the roster there. And obviously should be another big year in Fremont, California. Number 23, Gulf Coast State. Wanted to highlight them a little bit more in depth as we went along here. This is the highest we've ever had Gulf Coast State. At the very least when it comes to a preseason ranking. They've probably been in the top 25 in the season before, but this is the first time since I've been doing it they've been a preseason top 25 club. So I think that's notable. Head coach Tyler Younger obviously doing an incredible job there. They host us at the PCB College Classic. We'll be there in a couple weeks there, and I'm excited to get down there. But a really talented roster. They're led by the number one JUCO prospect in the country. That's left-handed pitcher Carson Dorsey. He's committed to Florida State. Another lefty in Christian Oppor is a guy to keep an eye on. Ethan Lizema, RJ Johnson, two very talented outfielders. Would expect good things this year in Panama City Beach. Number 22, Johnson County out of Kansas, another perennial power. Should be really, really strong offensively. Cooper Combs is a guy who rakes. Shea McGahan is the catcher. One of, if not the strongest arms I've ever seen behind the plate, and I'm not exaggerating for the sake of Hollywood here on TV, but absolute cannon. He's going to be a difference maker. And number 21, Chipola, an old standard. Obviously, Jeff Johnson's club. Would expect them to be really good again. The Panhandle should be extremely strong with the addition of Gulf Coast State as one of those kind of powerhouses now. But expecting another good year in Mariana from Coach Johnson's club. Chipola checking in at 21.
Yeah, it's interesting. Tyler Younger was an assistant coach on a Mississippi State team a couple of years ago that won a national championship to shine the light on Gulf Coast State College just a little bit more. To put a bow on that event you're talking about, it's February 3, 4, and 5. And once we unveil the entire top 25 at that event, you'll see 8 teams at that event alone in the top 23. So it's an incredible event. And I'm a little biased on this one. 2 times they've been national runners-up in 65 and 73. and that's where my father pitched his college baseball. So for me, I appreciate you including Gulf Coast. My late father learning a lot playing for Gulf Coast. All right, onward and upward. Wabash Valley comes in for you at number 20. This is a team in my simple education of the JUCO level always finds their door open to a lot of four-year players that want to flip things quickly, maybe don't fit in. They go to Wabash in Illinois. It seems to be such a blue-collar program. Take us from 20 to 16. I can jump in whenever you need me.
Yeah, and Wabash, another perennial powerhouse. You'll see a lot of those throughout the course of this ranking. Down here at number 20, this is one of the schools that has a first-year head coach, and there's several of them on this list, and that's something that's a little bit rarer to see in JUCO. JUCO is still the place where you see guys who are head coaches for 30-plus years in one place. You know, you don't see that obviously at the D1 level anymore, not very often. But new head coach Aaron Biddle, he's not new to Wabash. He was Rob Fournier's assistant for a long time. He knows the lay of the land. He's been recruiting there for a long time. I don't expect there to be any hiccups in that sense. But yes, you hit it really hard on the head there as far as this is a place that houses prospects. They always have. They bring in highly talented players. Jackson Sousey, the big lefty, a name to keep an eye on this year as far as that prospect stock goes. Up at number 19, Dyersburg State, a Tennessee club. Them and Walters State have kind of owned the state of Tennessee in recent years. We actually had quite a bit of internal debate as to whether we'd have Dyersburg or Walters number one as far as in the state of Tennessee goes. Dyersburg at 19, love the athleticism of the lineup, should be really, really offensive. Just kind of need to put it together this year and knock off the champs, so to speak. Number 18, Sut, we want to focus here on San Joaquin Delta. This is another one of those California schools. Stockton, California, NorCal zone. We talked about Ohlone, Sacramento City, Santa Rosa. Those are all very, strong perennial JUCO powers in NorCal. But San Joaquin Delta is our pick this year as far as coming out of NorCal. Really, really high-end arms this year. Fidel Ulloa is one of the better JUCO prospects in the country. He's committed to LSU. They have several guys throughout the rotation and bullpen that are already committed to Power 5 schools, a couple to USC with Will Watson and Dylan Tostrup. We'd expect their arms to be really, really good, and just that's a program that we can talk every single year about, and we often do.
Yeah, it's fun because we're talking about our second California program. Again, for the maybe uneducated at the JUCO level, these California schools play for their own championship, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a topic I talk about every year when I'm talking to these coaches. It's like, is there a reality where, maybe you don't join the NJCAA, but you're able to play some NJCAA schools, a la what we do in PCB early in the year, that type of invitational setting. And it really comes down to California JUCO doesn't do scholarships, and that's across all sports. We've seen it on Last Chance U with football and basketball stories coming out of there. They don't do athletic scholarships, but vice versa, or oftentimes it's extremely affordable to go there, especially if you're an in-state player. But yeah, it's its own world, but as you can see by the talent we're talking about and the talent we'll continue to talk about, they absolutely belong in the discussion as far as the best JUCO programs.
Yeah, it's crazy. Reed Peters, the head coach there, 426 and 180 in his storied career. His brother Rex, by the way, is an assistant on John Savage's staff at UCLA. San Joaquin Delta as a Californian. They won it all in 2011 and 2018. They sent a bunch of guys to the pros, so we wrapped them up. That's a fun program to focus on. 17 and 16, just a quick button up from you on LSU Eunice and Florence Darlington. Obviously, number 17 located in Louisiana, number 16 in South Carolina.
Yeah, and LSU Eunice at 17. Last year was kind of the first year that they'd been knocked off their perch in a while in D2. They're an NJCAA D2 team, obviously, of which we'll have several on here, but they were a dynasty, basically. They'd won several national championships in a row. Pearl River knocked them off last year. You'll hear about them a little later, but would expect them to be really good again, per usual. Head coach Jeff Willis. They have lots of arms who are in the mid-90s already. It should be a talented, flame-throwing bunch. And Flodar's another team where we looked at them, and I think, comparing to my brain in a month, I think I'm going to think that we were low on Flodar here at 16. Really talented on the mound, lots of athleticism, lots of high-octane stuff. They bring back a fair bit offensively from what was a really good offensive team a year ago, and they picked up some key guys at the break. Head coach Preston McDonald there, I would expect that club to be really good, and that's another team we'll see in Panama City.
Yeah, Flodar perfect. Even if they feel maybe you had them a little low, you're reflecting on it. They'll just put it on the bulletin board, and they'll go out and wax the floor with everybody else. all their opposing teams, thank you a lot for doing that. So take it on down to 15-11. Now we're starting to get into even the casual JUCO fans, some real familiar names. One of them, Walters State. We're going to put the spotlight on Heartland at number 13. But take us on down, 15-13. We'll pause at Heartland and talk about them just a bit.
Yeah, Walters State, we went with them again. We just talked about it a little bit. Went with them as our top team in Tennessee, but just by a couple spots in the overall board here. Head coach Dave Shelton's been there for a long, long time. The reason they're not higher is because they had a 4 horsemen of the apocalypse rotation last year. It was a nightmare rotation for opposing teams. All veteran dudes. They struck out 18,000 hitters between the 4 of them last year, something along those lines. But they lose them all. Those guys are all gone, either to pro ball or D1 schools. So having to replace that amount of rotation innings, not necessarily innings specifically, but that amount of rotation innings, going to be tough, but they're really talented. Watch out for Danielle Ortiz there. He's a third baseman. He's a true freshman. Coach Shelton says he can do it all. That's a draft guy to watch. Up at number 14, Cochise out of Arizona, another school where part of our process was just how frequently we heard them mentioned by other programs. Any school you talk to in Arizona would bring up Cochise. Some California schools mentioned Cochise. Some Texas schools mentioned Cochise as really powerhouse type of program. Would expect them to be obviously really good. We ranked them at number 14. Head coach Todd Engelhart there. Evan Shaw, the lefty in the rotation, he's committed to Kansas. Marco Ozuna, who's an All-American closer, powerhouse arms there. Number 13, Heartland. This is our number 2 Division II school. We'll talk about number 1 here shortly, but a team out of the Midwest, I love that in particular. They have star power at the top with Sam Antonacci, shortstop, left-handed bat, all 5 tools. Isaiah Jackson runs it up to 98 on the mound. Just another club that we were just super impressed by in all of our offseason research.
Yeah, they went to the D2 World Series last year in Enid, Oklahoma. They played well. We'll introduce you to the champs here in just a little bit. Personnel changes in JUCO more than anything. It's kind of the hiring market in the real world these days. Lots of turnover, obviously, but they stole 128 bases last year. They got on at a ridiculous 476 clip. All those numbers are almost like I'm making them up. And you got to wonder, a young head coach in Chris Razzo, who has taken over that program, it may be a philosophy that speed comes there. Now, they homered 89 times and they slugged it well, but man, they were aggressive on the base path. Sometimes at this level, you'll find programs that stick to philosophies and don't budge, correct?
Absolutely. And it's something that works. You see it at every level of baseball, from the MLB down to high school and JUCO and certain programs that run certain systems. And if you're going to come to that school, it's because you fit that system. And when you fit that system, you're going to perform, and so on and so forth. And Heartland's obviously made it to a point of emphasis to be really, really good on the base paths, really, really aggressive, good controlling the strike zone. Power's fine. And, we've talked on these platforms enough. I'm a power guy. If you don't have power, it's hard for me to get super interested. But when you can execute an approach like this, when you can get on base a ton, when you can steal a bunch of bags, that's essentially the same thing as power when you think of power as just total bases. So they're doing it well there. We expect them to be really good. And it wouldn't surprise us if they're the D2 national champion.
Ooh, by the way, Normal, Illinois, you talked about them being Midwest. They're located in Normal, and they had their first alum crack the big leagues last year when Colin Holderman made it to the big leagues with the Mets, eventually played for the Pirates as well. That's always a big celebration, and he was a perfect 5-0 out of the bullpen with a sparkling 3.81 ERA. Last 2 kind of household names. When you go to 11, you talk about Salt Lake in Utah, Miami-Dade. Everyone's heard of Miami-Dade and their junior college legend. Tell us about, just briefly, 12 and 11.
Yeah, Miami-Dade, super talented. Stop me if you've heard this before. Florida JUCO is really good, from the bottom of the state to the Panhandle. Miami-Dade expecting them to be really good. Alex Uloa is a key piece in there. It's a name, was a 4th-round pick a couple years ago, spent last year at Yavapai. Obviously, Yavapai went through a coaching change. He's at Dade now. Would expect him to be one of the top hitters in JUCO. Herrick Hernandez in the rotation. Robert Fernandez in the rotation. They have some interesting freshmen to watch. They have a lefty named Irvis Solis, a lefty with a lot of stuff. Head coach there, Adrian Morales. Miami-Dade should be strong. And Salt Lake at 11, just shy of the top 10 here. Bring back a lot of guys. There's a lot of experience that comes back. The depth of the arms, the depth of the team defense is something that they felt that they had an advantage with. They're an extremely physical team too, Seth. This is one of those, just look at the roster things. They have dudes who are 7'2", 6'10", 6'8", bunch of guys listed at 6'6". My high school basketball team, for example, their tallest player was 6'2". I know that's comparing different things, but either way, yeah, Salt Lake head coach David Nelson out there in Utah, just shy of the top 10 here at number 11.
All right, when we come back, we're going to pause for just a moment. Where do the defending national champs land on all of this? Are they 10? Are they 1? Are they in? We'll see where Central Arizona, who won it all at JUCO last year, lands as we share the top 10. Brian and I, thank you for hanging out with us as we unveil the top 25 in junior college in the 2023 season. Brian and Darren revealing the top 25 in junior college baseball. And it's really just Brian and his team. We'll introduce them here in just a bit. But I want to introduce them, Brian, all our viewers, to the fact of the journey to pros can clearly be paved through junior college baseball. Little note from last year. In the 2022 draft, 117 players, they might have gone on to a 4-year. They might have been drafted out of JUCO. But that draft, 117 who had played some level of junior college baseball.
Yeah, and it's such a level that, clearly I'm passionate about it needing a focus, it needing a spotlight. You just read the numbers off. Of 616 picks in a 20-round draft, roughly 20% of them have played some level of JUCO baseball. Not all that long ago, we were doing a 40-round draft and having 100-plus kids taken just from JUCO, not even including guys who went on to 4-year schools. It's always been a feeder level for talent. And that is not specific to college baseball. That's specific to professional baseball. There's any number of guys who are top 5 rounders in a given year, any number of guys who get life-changing money in the draft in a given year. A lot of times teams want to see these guys go perform at a bigger conference, at a D1 school. And then once they do that, they get life-changing money after that year too. So it's such an important level to focus on, and obviously something I've been passionate about for quite a while, and it's cool as heck to be able to do it on PGTV too.
Yeah, with the advancement of coaches too, pro to college, college to pro, big leagues back to college, there's more player development than ever going on in junior college baseball. That's what makes it fun. Let's jump back in. Let's go to number 10 with Pearl River. They're out of Poplarville, Mississippi. They were the Division II national champs. They won the event last year in Enid. As a matter of fact, they beat Madison College. They hammered them 19-1, 7-2. They won 45 games last year. Michael Avalon, the head coach at Pearl River.
Yeah, and this is a team we talked about a little bit earlier when we were talking about LSU Eunice. They couldn't quite get over that Eunice hump. And it's a little bit of a uniqueness in seeding or whatever that in order to get to Enid, LSU Eunice and Pearl River usually end up playing each other. So it's not like they can both go. And we see that in D1 too with it's one of Wabash or Iowa Western, or it's one of a school in Texas, whatever. Same vibe here. Pearl River got over that hump last year, and then once they did, there was really no stopping them. Michael Avalon's been there a number of years. He's consistently built this program up. It's become the premier D1 destination in Mississippi. The facilities there are outstanding. Ian Montz is a big name this year. Alex Perry's a big name this year. 2 positional guys with lots of tools who should have some draft interest. On the mound, Will Pissot, a guy who's probably going to be their ace. He's signed with Mississippi State. They're just really, really deep. They return a lot of guys. The pitching depth has been maybe the best it's ever been. They'll need to replace the middle of the diamond, but aside from that, they're really excited about what they're working with there. Moving up to number 9, Northwest Florida State, another Panhandle JUCO, another powerhouse, another team that we're going to see in Panama City Beach. Interesting this year, going into the Panhandle Conference, primarily expecting to rely on freshman arms is always a risky proposition, and that's kind of what's facing the Raiders here. But hey, Doug Martin, head coach there for a long time. They bet on talent, they bet on upside, and they have quite a bit of it. The Witherspoon twins are there, Malachi and Kyson. They're both going to be extremely important arms. Blaze Grove is a lefty we've known about for a long time. He's there. Kendry Maduro, their shortstop, would expect him to be a high draft pick this year. Alex Urban came in from Clemson. Just a really talented team overall, obviously. Iowa Western at 8. This is another team with a new head coach. Ryan Kugel is there after spending quite a few years at Yavapai, down your way, Sutton, Arizona. He's the new guy in Council Bluffs after Mark Raridan, of course, took the head coaching job at Western Kentucky. Really, really high-end arms. Marcus Phillips going to be one of the top JUCO prospects in the country. Jared Lessman and Noah Bush are both committed to Louisville already. They bring back an okay amount of returning bats, but they'll need some guys to step up. But excited about the freshmen they have in there. Brandon Rogers is one of those guys. AJ Singer's another one. Number 7, out of the Midwest, Cowley. Arkansas City, Kansas. Our pick to click in the state of Kansas this year. A lot of returning bats that they like. Hayden O'Toole in the middle infield, Logan Vaughn behind the plate, Ty Hammock in center field. Like the upside of Carlton Perkins on the mound. We saw them a fair bit at the Wichita Showcase back in September. Just a lot to like, obviously, about Cowley there, and that's a team that we've forever kind of had as one of our picks out of the Midwest. And number 6, to close us down in this section, this is going to be Florida Southwestern. This is yet another school that has a new head coach. Ben Bizier is gone. Zach Cole is in. He's the new head guy. This is basically a brand new team. We saw this team a year ago at PCB. None of those guys are back. This kind of a whole roster turnover situation, but did he bring in some power arms and some big talents offensively? AJ Shaver's there from Florida State. Ari Samick is there from Clemson. Javon Gill is in there. He's an arm we've seen quite a few times over the years. Marty Gare just came in from UNCW. Just all kinds of stuff to like about the talent level there. We'll see how it plays together. This is going to be they are all playing together for the first time, so it's going to be unique in that sense, but expecting big things from Florida Southwestern with the amount of talent on that roster.
Great program, great facilities. They kind of lead the pack as far as facilities go. Great story at Cali where Darren Burrows, who played 10 years as a pro, took over the program for his legendary brother Dave, who chased 1,400 wins in his career, and it's just a strong family tie. Cali won 54 games last year. I'm a little biased towards Doug Martin's team at Northwest Florida because he and I were on the same staff at Auburn Montgomery. We pitched together. Doug won it all a couple of years back. They snuck out and just got everyone and won it all in 2015. He's a disciplined coach. I mean, I know him personally and have for years, but discipline is his thing. So that's a fun rundown. All right. We're going to go 5 down to 1, but we're not throwing up that full screen graphic, letting everybody see what's, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Number 5 out of Missouri is Crowder. 4 times they've been to that World Series. With Travis Lallemande as their head coach. He just went into the Region 16 Hall of Fame. Crowder's in your number 5 spot.
Yeah, and this is another perennial powerhouse, a World Series pick year in and year out as far as getting there. And as we know, once you get there, anything can happen. But Coach Lalleman, well deserving of the Hall of Fame nod. I would imagine that he's got some NJCAA hardware in his future. But they did really well in it's not the transfer portal, but they did really well in the transfer market, so to speak. Nick Moten comes in from Arkansas. Easton Swafford comes in from Arkansas. Houston King is back in the outfield. Josh Livingston is back at third base. These are all extremely impactful players. David Johnson came in from Nebraska. He was a star at Iowa Western for a couple years already. Would expect Riley Hunsaker to have a bigger role this year. He's a recently committed D1 arm. But another strong year in Neosho, Missouri. Would expect nothing less, even if they're a little rusty out the gate as they kind of replace what was a huge team a year ago.
Yeah, Jacob Misiorowski was a part of that huge team. JUCO baseball invest in it. The Brewers invested $2.35 million in him. So coming out of JUCO as a second-round pick. Aaron Ashby, who jumped to the big leagues, left-handed pitcher last year with the Brewers. He's an alum of Crowder who went 54-13 a year ago. Patrick Swayze, the late legendary She's Like the Wind Patrick Swayze, is an alum of San Jacinto. This may be the most famous junior college name that we have on this show. Clemens and Pettit, and even Devin Smeltzer, a newer guy. But San Jack comes in at the number 4 mark with Tom Arrington as their head coach.
Yeah, it's just I kind of wrote it in my note here. The talent pipeline remains as strong as ever, and that's kind of the summation of San Jack, if you want to put it that way. Another overused trope is they don't rebuild, they reload, and that's just the truth of the matter here. They're really, really talented. They should maybe be a little bit more offensive than they have been in years past. If you want to kind of tip the balance of power within San Jack, I guess it's a little lean more towards the offense than the arms. But Cullen Horowitz is a guy they expect huge things from. Jake Bennett's a freshman with all kinds of power. Jose Torres is maybe the best defensive catcher in JUCO. If not, he's certainly up in that mix. They bring back a fair bit of experience on the mound. Lex Garcia is back after having a good year last year. But it's going to be a lot of newcomers on the mound. Cale Lansville came in from LSU. We all know that name. Power right-handed arm. Gage Boehm is in. That's another transfer who's got big stuff. John Paul Ramos is a freshman, another arm with lots of velocity. We'll see how it all comes together for them, but they should have the offense to kind of support their young pitchers as they get their feet wet.
Yeah, younger staff is taking over a staff last year that threw 490-plus innings and struck out 626. So they missed a ton of bats. By the way, Tom Arrington last year went over 1,000 wins. 13 times he has coached a team that has gone to that JUCO World Series. Will this be the year that they put the crown on? Will it be the year? They've gone to that final dance so many times, but such a great, as you said, developer of players and a pipeline of players. All right, moving on down. Here we go. Florida, Central Florida, Marty Smith. And Marty Smith steps in as the head coach. You have them in the 3 spot.
Yeah, we, up and down the list, you kind of see a certain amount of subjectivity to the rankings, and that's why we do it the way we do it. We don't take polls, so it's not really objective, it's more subjective. But this was a team that we kept coming back to. I think we probably had them number 8 in the first rough draft or whatever it was, and then they were number 6, and then they were 5, and then they were 4, and and so we found them a spot at 3. We love them there. We're really, really aggressive on them this year. I think this is the year that they take that step and own Florida, which is why we have them reflected as the best team in the state. But really talented team. Brad Keylori's their shortstop. He's committed to Tennessee. There's some star power there. Really good defender. John Morant's got as much power as anybody in JUCO. We'll see how it comes along. But Carson Baines, the center fielder, he's back from last year after a big season. Lots of arms. They're led by Brian Holiday. He came in from Florida Southwestern, the guy we saw last year. Committed to Oklahoma State. 92, 94, all kinds of stuff to like on the mound. Edwin Toribio, a freshman that coach says we need to watch, a middle of the order hitter right away. But either way, we're rolling with them as our best team in Florida. So we just really like the makeup of the club.
I love Thaddeus Hector, the super athlete, good young man. I've enjoyed on all the content we've done. Loved watching him play. All right, we're moving down. They've got a new coach, by the way, because their previous head coach has gone on to lead Baylor. You have McLennan, who always is heading to the JUCO World Series. McLennan in the number 2 spot. 83 and then 2021 national champs. They lock in your 2 spot.
Yeah, like you said, new coach, Tyler Johnson, but he's been around. This is we talk about bloodlines when we're talking about players. This is a coach with bloodlines. Obviously, the son of Skip, head coach at Oklahoma. He was the assistant to Mitch Thompson at McLennan for a couple years, took it over when Mitch went to Baylor. Mitch wouldn't have let that happen if he didn't think that Tyler was the right guy. And, anything that I know about Tyler and in our interactions is he's absolutely the right guy. So he's bringing back a good amount of stuff. They'll have to replace a lot of innings on the mound, but Devin Bennett kind of took a big step forward this fall. He's the ace. He's going to be one of the better prospects in the country. Will Clements is a guy who saw some time last year. I think we saw him pitch in Panama City Beach, actually, but would expect him to be one of their key rotation members. Trenton Shaw's a freshman they really like. Kindon Lovell's a freshman they really like. Ty Johnson's back in the middle of the order. Chase Brown at third. Cole Dillon at behind the plate. Those are kind of your key contributors. But again, another team that doesn't rebuild, they reload. And regardless of coaching changes, I would expect McLennan to be McLennan, which is to say synonymous with consistently really, really good.
Waco, Texas. They're in the heartland of America in Waco, right down the street from Baylor there. That worked out very nicely. They were 50 and 13 last year. 50 and 13. What an incredible program that is. All right. Number 1, Anthony's team, Central Arizona. Somewhere between where I sit right now and Tucson lies that unique campus which won it all a year ago, and they won, Brian, you and your team's heart. This year again, you have them number 1.
And this has become sort of a common refrain in the last couple of years. Obviously, they've won a couple national championships in the last several years. It's as perennial a powerhouse as there is in JUCO baseball when we're talking about recent years. Like you said, Sut, that's one of my more enjoyable stops along the scouting trail throughout the course of the year is like, all right, Go to Phoenix and then like turn south and drive until you're sure you're nowhere. And then guess what? The best JUCO team in the land is practicing right there. It's a unique vibe, and I like it quite a bit. Obviously, Coach Anthony Gillich is a superstar. They have a lot of upside on the mound. Matt Wilkinson's the ace. He's a lefty. He's committed to Arizona State. 1994. His nickname's Tugboat. Got some fame in the Little League World Series several years ago, pitching for one of the Canadian teams there. A little bit of an internet celebrity in that sense, but he's also really, really good. Ryan Schieffer is probably their best prospect on the pitching side. Big righty. He was at Grand Canyon last year. He's also committed to Arizona State. Patrick Steets is a 6'8" righty. Lou Albrecht behind the plate. They really like the way that he's going to kind of handle this high-octane staff, and that's something that's so important at CAC every year, is having that dude behind the plate. And Albrecht is that guy. Blake Avila, Luke Fiel, those are both key contributors as well. But yeah, this is number one. This is who we're rolling with. We really didn't even have any conversations to the contrary. The second we started thinking about JUCO 2023, which is 4 or 5 months ago now, CAC kind of unanimously. So we're rolling with them. They're our national championship pick, and I defy someone to pick anyone better. So...
Well done. Well said. What way to challenge our viewers. I like that. 168 players drafted all time in this program's history. They have 20 Major League Baseball alumni, so they're not new to this thing. Names like Ian Kinsler and Scott Harrison, they won it all, as he said, 4 times overall in 19 and 22. Remember, the pandemic shut things down in 20, so just about every time they put it together. Now, a quick reminder, as Brian and I talked about, it's the College Baseball Classic. Perfect Game puts it on. Panama City Beach hosted at that great complex. It's February 3, 4, and 5. We'll have wall-to-wall coverage live streaming. Brian and I will be calling it. We're excited to be doing it. And some of the reminders of who is there: Gulf Coast State, Chipola, Wabash Valley, Florence, Darlington, Northwest Florida State, Florida Southwestern, San Jacinto, and McLennan. They're all going to be there. That's 8 teams in the top 23. That's going to be a fun event. They're all right there in a quad playing all the time like spring training baseball. What a great event, Brian.
It was the highlight of my spring last year, in a spring that was really a fun one for me personally. But it was, the highlight of my spring was getting engaged. Let's make sure we put that out there. The second highlight was the PCB Invitational. There really is nothing like it. There's a lot of kind of powerhouse showcase type vibes that we do and others do throughout the course of the fall, where there's a lot of talented teams there. None of them are this many. None of them are actual tournament style games either. So I think this is unique in and of itself, and it's probably number 2 to Grand Junction as far as having the number of talented teams and prospects all in one place like we're going to have.
A lot of hot takes you can clip out from what Brian's saying, and I love it. Hey, by the way, you don't have these hot takes and these rankings. You used to be a lone wolf out there, Don Quixote, chasing these rankings. You have a team now that really works with you. We don't say goodbye until we introduce your team, please.
Absolutely, and it's important to talk about. This was, like you said, the JUCO coverage of Perfect Game was not all that long ago a solo passion project, and I'm proud of what it's become, what I was able to build it into, proud of the contributions that we've gotten from people over the years. But this year we have a dedicated team, and it's really, you haven't seen it yet, but you will, as far as how it's reflected in our content. But Troy Sutherland, who is our Mid-South area guy out of Memphis, Blaine Peterson, who's our Midwest area guy out of Kansas City, and Cam McElwaney, who's one of our area guys out of Georgia. They're all passionate about JUCO baseball, passionate about the level. I've been thrilled at the sort of intensity with which they've pursued this, what they've brought to it, what us combined have been able to accomplish. So definitely looking forward to more stuff with the JUCO team now that we have one.
And we want to remind everyone, that's 25. If you want to take it deeper, visit perfectgame.org. Brian takes it on down to 50, and you can see the rankings there. A reminder, February 3, 4, and 5, Panama City Beach. If you want to get down there, if not, we'll be streaming a minimum of 2 to 3 games a day with the top teams in the country on Perfect Game TV. Brian, thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Let's go. It's JUCO season.
It's like Brian's Christmas Day, and I know for those of you that have taken the time to find us, it's yours as well. Enjoy the season, everyone. There's your top 25 preseason as rolled out by Brian Sakowski and his team on Perfect Game.